We've already scraped the bottom of the barrel. But what if we scrape just a little harder? My name's JR, and this is Warframe Built to Destroy. Hey, what's up, Pops? It's JR, and guess what? I'm not sick anymore. For those of you who don't follow me on Twitter, which you should totally do, at VectorDarkFox on Twitter, it's a good time. The reason I didn't upload at all last week is because I got hit with a pretty nasty bug. Apparently, whenever I lose my voice, that's a sign that I'll get sick a few days later. Either way, I'm not sick anymore, and my voice and I are back to bring some more par at best content for you all. But before we get into this episode of BTD, there's something I would like to address. In the episode where I built Sindu Prime, I mentioned that I was planning on making that video on a different melee, but I had not fully built it yet, and thusly it was going to be the melee for Season 3. However, I'm a complete dumbass, and I smashed the ribbon for that weapon for Endo to be able to upgrade a different ribbon, completely forgetting that I was yet to make a video on said weapon. So, because I kept it secret for so long, even censoring it when I accidentally had it equipped during a live commentary I did a while back, I'm just going to tell you guys what it was and give you a ballpark on how I built it. The melee I was planning to make a video on initially was Machete Wraith. I had a lot of fun with it, and people seem to think that machetes are the worst thing since whole bread. Get it? Because like it's like the best thing since the best thing since sliced bread. But it's the opposite, so it would be the worst thing since... Yeah, you get it. Anyway, I got my hands on a machete ribbon, and if you get a ribbon for what people consider the worst weapon in the game, you're not going to not build it, right? So, a few rerolls and formers later, I full built Machete Wraith, and, much like everything that people seem to think is shit with no facts to back it up, it was a very viable weapon. All you have to do to make Machete Wraith viable is build it focusing on status chance using the stance mod Cyclone Kraken. I recommend Cyclone Kraken because some of the attacks in the combos for it guarantee a slash or impact proc, so seeing as how we're focusing on status, a guaranteed proc is always nice to have. After you get your damage and status up, simply throw on the mod Condition Overload, and there you go, Machete Wraith is now usable. Now that that's out of the way, on to the main attraction. Remember how I said people thought that machetes were the worst thing in Warframe? Do you also remember how I said if you get a ribbon for the worst weapon in the game, you're not going to not build it? Well, even though people hate machetes, none of them are the worst weapon in the game. How do I know this? Simple. I own the worst weapon in the game. And you bet your bottom fucking dollar I'm making a video on it. Ladies and gentlemen, behold, Plasma Sword. I'ma let that bitch Plasma Sword, while it looks very corpus in design, is a Tenno single-handed sword exclusive to alert missions. That's right, if you want this weapon, you have to wait for and complete an alert mission for the blueprint. No, you can't even buy it in the market. So obviously, if a weapon is so exclusive, it must be good, right? Of course. Plasma Sword boasts an amazingly unmatched 35 base damage. Pure electricity damage, nonetheless. But the memes don't stop there. Not only does Plasma Sword have an unfathomable amount of damage, it also sports a base attack rate of 0.667, making it the slowest weapon in the game. All sarcasm aside, I feel confident saying that Plasma Sword is statistically the worst weapon in the entirety of Warframe. I may have said the same about Oklotto in my video on it, but that was simply a slip of the tongue. I meant to say that Oklotto was the worst secondary weapon in the game. Because, I mean, come on, with such a low base damage stat, paired with the fact that it's the slowest weapon in the game, it's blatantly clear that DE made this weapon purely as a meme for the people who see it in alert for the first time, run the mission, build it, just so when they use it, they get the full experience of DE saying, "Lol, pranked, get f***ed, kid." But, if you know me, just because something is the worst in the game, that doesn't mean I'm gonna neglect it. Hell, Zephyr was my favorite Warframe back before her rework made her a CC monster, and even back when she required 1,200 Oxium to fully research in the dojo and build, even though, at the time, Oxium Ospreys only dropped Oxium in bundles of 1 to 3. Yep. That means in the best case scenario of every Oxium Osprey dropping 3 Oxium every time, and you have a resource booster active, you still needed to successfully kill 200 individual Oxium Ospreys. You see why they changed the way Oxium drops. Anyway, back to Plasma Sword. How would you react if you unveiled a melee Riven mod only to see that you got a Riven for the worst weapon in the game? It would probably go something like this. However, when I unveiled this beautiful thing, I said to myself, there is physically no way anyone can stop me from building this thing. So lean back, and I'm going to give you guys an inside look at how I take the bottom of the barrel and refurbish it into a nice new coffee table. Because of how terrible Plasma Sword's stats are, this wasn't just a low tier weapon that if you just build like any other weapon, it'll eventually be considered viable. The stars will need to align if you want to be able to take this thing on a sortie. Luckily, our job was made a bit easier because Plasma Sword has a crit and status chance of 15%, making it able to crit and proc a decent amount. The ideal Riven mod for Plasma Sword would be plus damage / an elemental, since they both math out the same way, plus attack speed, then plus either crit or status chance. Either one works, it's just whichever one you get is basically just gonna say which one will be the source of the majority of your damage. However, my current Plasma Sword Riven is plus 172% electricity damage, plus 165.9% toxin damage, and, unfortunately, minus 30.3% damage to Grineer. Luckily, however, my Riven makes Plasma Sword pure corrosive damage, making it so it does more damage against Grineer already. Now, here's where things get interesting. You're gonna need some pretty high demand mods to be able to kick this thing up into the tier of usability. Most people would either say that crit is king and you should always build weapons for crit, but more experienced people would say the other end of the spectrum and say status is senpai, and the weapons that can proc are the best way to go. However, there's a thing I like to call a hybrid build, but I don't use it a whole lot because it isn't a very flexible way to build a weapon, albeit effective. But Plasma Sword is a special case, so we gotta break out the hybrid build. To make a hybrid weapon, said weapon needs to have a crit and status chance that is decently high. My threshold for considering a weapon a crit or status weapon is 15%. So that means that Plasma Sword has the bare minimum to be considered a hybrid weapon. Nextly, you're going to need 4 main mods for hybrid melee weapons: Drifting Contact, Weeping Wounds, Blood Rush, and Condition Overload. Blood Rush increases your weapon's crit chance by 135% with every stack of the melee combo counter. Weeping Wounds does the same with status chance, but by only 45%. To make climbing the combo counter a bit easier, all the while increasing our status chance even more, Drifting Contact is thrown into the mix, increasing our status chance by 40% and increasing our combo counter duration to 13 seconds instead of 3. You could also use Body Count instead for 2 extra seconds, but Drifting Contact is much better for hybrid weapons because of the bonus status chance. Finally, we have our old friend Condition Overload. This mod makes it so you do 60% more damage to a target per status proc they are currently affected by. Meaning, if you proc them with one damage type's proc, like Slash, you will do 60% more damage to that enemy for the duration of the Slash proc. But if you stack, say, a Puncture proc on top of that, then you are instead doing 120% more damage to the target. This means with a status weapon that has the 3 normal physical damage types, you can tack on 2 combo elementals for 5 possible procs. Meaning, if you proc someone with all 5 procs, you do an extra 300% damage to the proc target for the duration of each of the procs. However, with a pure elemental weapon like Plasma Sword, we are only able to get the bonus from 2 damage types at the most, just from hitting something repeatedly with it. You could use a high status primary or secondary weapon to proc the enemy, then move in with Plasma Sword for the kill, but that seems like a waste of time, as we need to be hitting people with Plasma Sword anyway to build our combo counter. Which, speaking of, if anyone here uses the Naramon Focus School, I recommend getting the perk Power Spike, which makes it so the combo counter only degrades by 5 hits at max rank instead of the entire thing going away after the duration of the combo counter ends. This will make keeping up the combo counter much easier. With all that out of the way, let's get to my build. I have Primed Pressure Point, Primed Fury, and Plasma Sword Vexitox, increasing my damage and attack speed, and making Plasma Sword pure corrosive damage. Next, I have the 4 mods I mentioned earlier: Condition Overload, Drifting Contact, Weeping Wounds, and Blood Rush to take full advantage of the hybrid build. Finally, I have Organ Shatter, increasing my crit damage to make my crits a bit more effective. With my 5 Forma build, hitting a target affected by a corrosive proc from my normal attacks and an electric proc from Plasma Sword Slam attack, and my Riven specifically, Plasma Sword gets up to 8,196 average overall damage and 8,475 average DPS at a 2.5 times combo multiplier. The DPS may seem rather low, but keep in mind, with Prime Fury, Plasma Sword still only has a 1.03 attack speed, meaning you're just barely attacking once every second. So, if you throw an average hit of 8,000 and you hit only once per second, obviously you're going to have a DPS very similar to your damage in general. I feel like the best way to show you what Plasma Sword is capable of is to simply let it do the talking. That's going to wrap up this episode of Built to Destroy. If you enjoyed this video, consider dropping a like, and make sure to hit that subscribe button to become a pup if you haven't already. Also, if you want to support me and the channel, consider becoming a patron for as little as $1 a month. My name's JR, and I'll see you guys in the next one.